You are listening to the Bell Ringers podcast on Philly Sports Reports, brought to you by SeatGeek. Here are your hosts, Colin Daly and Benjamin Goldstein.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bell Ringers podcast. Colin Daly here alongside Benjamin Goldstein, back for another exciting preseason. I think you can finally say that now. Episode here on the podcast. Well, we're 9 days away from opening day. Roster
Well, when
starting
this
to
goes
shake
up,
up.
we'll be 8.
8 days away from opening day.
8 days.
A whole Nick Castellanos away from opening day. That's how we've been doing it, right? The players' numbers.
Yeah, today I think we're running with Manny
one
Trio
important.
for 9 because Dominic Brown.
Yeah, that's not good.
There's not a lot of
Bad
number
picks.
9s.
No.
Nick Foles.
But we'll take. Oh, yeah.
Different
That's
sport.
cheating, I think, but
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. It's like potato. But as we see, spring training is starting to wind down. The rosters are beginning to take shape. It was announced, I believe, just yesterday that Zach Wheeler will officially be the Phillies' opening day starter in DC on Thursday, the 28th. It is, I believe.
27th? I don't know.
Thursday the
Is the
27th. You're
27th.
correct.
27th.
Thursday the 27th, opening day. Well, unless you're the Dodgers or Cubs, it is opening day for Major League Baseball. I guess it still is technically their opening day, right?
I don't know. I hate that how they start their season.
No, I'm not a fan.
And like a week before, and then they have to come back and still play spring training games. I think that's kind of bizarre.
Is Japan unavailable in 2 weeks from now? It's a pretty big
I don't know. They
country.
did the same thing last year. They played in like Korea.
Yeah, I get they can. It's like huge.
There was the Dodgers
too
somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? But so the roster's starting to take shape. We're seeing there's a lot of guys that don't have minor league options, so there are going to be a fair number of guys who just get outright cut from the team. I know we've talked about a lot of these matchups before. There's some battles for mostly utility roles. I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what our infield looks like. JT Realmuto is catching. You have Bryce Harper at first, Bryson Stott, Trey Turner, and Alec Boehm rounding out the infield, and then an outfield of Castellanos, Kepler, and Marsh. Obviously, we saw Kepler and Marsh sustain injuries earlier this week while crashing into a wall in the outfield. But it looks like there's no long-term impact there, and they'll be good to go come next Thursday. So, with all of that in mind, Ben, where do you see the biggest position battles on the bench right now? What's the front office going to be looking for when they make their decisions in a couple days here?
Well, you got the final utility spot and also an outfield spot because I'm not so sold on Johan Rojas yet, as he has yet to play center field this spring with his injury, which has been an interesting storyline. It was reported a few days ago that he threw in center field. He's had like this arm issue. He'll be ready to play center field sometime soon, but he's been DHing a lot, so haven't seen Rojas in center field yet. He's hitting okay. He's hitting 303, 378 on base, 893 OPS, and 33 at bats, which is pretty good, but he's not playing center field, so the batting numbers are kind of inflated a little bit due to that. So I don't know. It'll be interesting how they do that final bench spot. We can talk about. I for right now, I'm looking at Cody Clemens. I'm looking at Buddy Kennedy. I'm looking at some other guys, but my big thing, I would have gone Weston Wilson, but he's been injured all spring. Is he?
Right.
So that is my biggest. That's the thing. There is, no Weston Wilson leaves an open spot, so we'll see what goes on there with that. But we have a roster projection from yours truly. I made up this roster. So this is my 2025 opening day roster projection. I am taking in part, I'm thinking about options. I'm thinking about injuries. So there are things here. I have 2 guys on my IL. I have Weston Wilson and Matt Strahm on my injured list. Matt Strahm has not pitched basically all spring. He's had that shoulder thing. He could be ready for opening day. Not sure. So there will be a random guy in this bullpen that I will talk about in a moment. So my infield, here's my starting line. Here's my not my lineup, but my starters. I have JT Realmuto catching, Bryce Harper at first base, Bryson Stott at second base, Trey Turner at shortstop, Alec Boehm at third base, Max Kepler in left field, who we talked about crashing to that wall. He is fine. He played on Tuesday in his first game back. Brandon Marsh in center field as well. He also got injured. He bruised something. I don't remember exactly what it was. He bruised his knee, but he played Tuesday. He's fine. So I have him in center field, Nick Castellanos in right field, Kyle Schwarber DH. That was pretty predictable. My bench, I do have Johan Rojas on this opening day roster just due to the lack of outfield depth that this team has. I have Edmundo Sosa as the utility, who you could see some outfield time this year. He's been playing a lot of outfield in spring. And then I do have Cody Clemens on my in my roster this spring. He's hitting 317 and 41 at bats. I've loved what I've seen from Cody Clemens. He also adds an extra lefty bat. And then my catcher, this has been a big thing. Garrett Stubbs, who has had a nice spring, or Rafael Marchand, who's out of options. I have Rafael Marchand on my opening day roster, just as a matter of fact that he is a better catcher than Garrett Stubbs. And he has no options. And Phillies could need a guy to come up and pinch hit in a situation. Marchand is one of the best lefty hitters, is probably the best lefty hitter on this bench. Well, considering it's him and Cody. I do have Marchand is a better hitter than Cody in some situations. So I let's see Marchand. So he is a better catcher than Stubbs when JT needs to be out. My starting rotation, I have in no particular order: Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, and Ranger Suarez. And my bullpen is Jordan Romano, Orion Kirkring, Jose Alvarado, Jose Ruiz, Tanner Banks, Joe Ross, Colin's boy, Taijuan Walker, who's going to make this roster. Doesn't matter where he is. And my current substitution for Matt Strahm is Nabil Crismatt, who I did some research on the bullpen today. Crismatt, brought him over. I don't know how long. I low-key don't even know how long he's been here. But he's been around since 2020. He's kind of mid, 2.35 ERA in 6 games. He's thrown 7.2 innings, 7 strikeouts. Has had not such a bad spring. He's 30 years old. I see him on the opening day roster right now with Strahm out. But if Strahm is on this roster, obviously Crismatt won't be there and Strahm will be. So that is my roster. That is my 26-man.
Yeah, so another guy you might see thrown in there is Kyle Tyler. Obviously, it's a temporary role. I think either of them, have a decent shot of getting put in there. Crismatt started a game for the Phillies this spring training, which could give him a little bit of an upper hand. And his numbers in 2024 were also a little bit stronger. He made 5 appearances out of the bullpen last year when he was with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
World Series
Another,
champ.
what's that?
He's a World Series champion.
This is true. About as much of a World Series champion as Scott Kingery could have been. What was that, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
A question for you is, so your starting rotation, I think, is pretty much agreed upon right now among the Phillies fan base. Can you give me a breakdown? If you were Rob Thompson, Sam Fall, Dave Dombrowski, John Milton, whoever you want to be in the Phillies front office, when you have that conversation with Taijuan Walker, he's not in the starting rotation. What is that conversation going to look like? And are you setting him an expectation out of the bullpen?
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit on our last pod. Like, you talk to the guy, like,
We always do. He
yeah,
always comes up. It's our favorite topic.
we do talk about Taijuan Walker a lot, and it's kind of a problem. But there is no spot on this. There's no spot in the starting rotation for you. Like, our best 2 pitchers don't like 6-man rotations because they don't like the extra rest, and that's Wheeler and Nola. You got to do what the big money guys ask. And, like, frankly, there's no spot on this team for Taijuan Walker other than a long guy in the bullpen.
Which is what he'll be.
This is why I'm sitting behind a microphone and I'm not in the front office because I don't know what I would tell the guy. I run Philly
Well,
sports
are you
report.
putting a
I've
leash
never
on him?
had this. I've never had this kind of position before where I've had to tell someone that you just literally don't belong. Um,
Oh,
but
I have. It's great. One, but is there like a leash on him? Like, if you're
uh,
just like, what do you
well,
do with him if he's atrocious?
go out there and do your best, and hopefully you impress us. Because like I don't really know what to
Because
tell
we
the
have
guy.
no other option.
Yeah, because you are literally the only guy we have to fill this bullpen spot. If we had someone to fill this bullpen spot, you probably wouldn't be on this roster.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, I think that's about as much as you can offer the guy, right? He has not shown any sign. He's been a little bit better this spring training, but you can't look at those numbers in isolation. I mean, we saw a handful of guys who had really strong spring trainings last year, and that just didn't pan out in the regular season. Um, a good example of that could be Scott Kingery. His name got brought up when he was still with the Phillies, and I saw he got DFA'd today, actually.
yeah,
Um, his name got brought up as a potential bench option every single spring training because that was just the way that he was pitched. He was facing non-competitive pitchers. He wasn't getting pitchers' best stuff, and he was playing against other minor league guys, a lot of whom were in, he was in AAA. A lot of these guys were in AA, low A, high A, somewhere in there. And then every year after people are like, oh, Kingery should have got another chance, he goes down in the minors and hits 265 with a 710 OPS, and he's just about as average as everyone else down there. So I think all those numbers have to be taken with a grain of salt. But at the same time, when Walker hasn't produced for the past 2 seasons, he could have a 0 ERA in spring training. And I don't think you can put him in the rotation.
yeah. This spring 9.1 innings, 3.86 ERA, and 3 starts.
Yeah, it's nothing
Five
great.
strikeouts, 1.18 WHIP. You want to hear what MLB.com has listed as Taiwan Walker's nickname?
Ty,
Ty Weezy.
pardon?
Ty Weezy.
I don't think that's a thing. I've
That's
never
what
heard
MLB.
anyone say, good
That's what
job, Wheezy.
MLB.com has listed as his
That is
nickname, Ty
so.
Weezy.
Wait, there's no way. I'm fact checking. I don't believe you.
I'm serious.
Taiwan Walker,
MLB.com, Ty Weezy.
MLB.com.
I'm
I, oh my, it's 2 words too.
yeah, Ty
I
Weezy.
don't know what I expected. I got the first part right though with the tie, and then Wheezy. I, I guess the W, and he just
Yeah, I don't know.
filled in
That's
the
kind of
blank
bizarre.
after.
But I can tell you
That is more than bizarre.
he Wheezy.
Wheezing his way through the
He's wheezing his
season.
way onto this roster because the Phillies have an open spot. Question for you. You're a fellow catcher. This backup catch,
Yeah.
Colin, this
No.
backup catch situation is interesting. Garrett Stubbs has not been great in the majors. We know it. And Rafael Marchand is out of options. I have Marchand on my roster because he doesn't have options, and he's flat out, I think, just a better player than Stubbs. What are you doing with this backup catcher situation?
So you know how we always say that we talk about Taiwan Walker on the pod all the time? I'm gonna tie this back to something that I've talked about a lot, and that is like changing the way that the club itself approaches players who struggle. I was a big proponent of trading Alec Boehm in the offseason, and that was because I firmly believe that if you do not perform when it's needed most, like expelling those players from your organization is a wake-up call to the people around them to like if you don't do your job at the time when it's most pertinent, you're going to be out of said job. So I think this is an opportunity for the Phillies to kind of show Stubbs' teammates, now Marchand's teammates, that, if you do not, like, regardless of what status you might have with the team, whether you are really, really good at filling up the water jugs like before the game, or if you're the hype guy, or if you like scream the loudest in the dugout, or maybe you're like you're Alvarado and they don't. His pitching might be bad, but they just keep him around because he can make the chickens out of towels. Like at the end of the day, it comes down to how you perform when you're on the field. And if you're not performing on the field, then we're not going to have you in the dugout to do all of those extra things that you can add to the team. So I'm taking Marshawn 10 times out of 10 here. I think it just kind of reshapes the culture of the team itself, which I think after how their season ended in 2024, that would be very beneficial.
Yeah, Stubbs this spring hitting 286 in 21 at bats. Meanwhile, Marshawn 261 in 23 ABs, 3 RBIs for Marshawn, 4 for Stubbs. Stubbs has outnumbered Marshawn 804 OPS compared to 650 OPS. So Stubbs is having the better spring. But regular season numbers, larger sample sizes, and just overall, I'm
I
going
mean,
Marshawn. Also, there could be a spot this season
the Stubbs have an
where,
option.
where they could you need Marshawn, you need a left-handed pinch hitter to come up in a big situation and get a hit, have a valid at bat. And I would rather send Rafael Marshawn up there than Garrett Stubbs. Let's say, it's like May 6th, you're in Atlanta, it's the top of the 8th inning, you're down 2-1. Your two options on the bench, you have either Marshawn or you have Stubbs to go up and get a base hit. I'm taking Marshawn. But if you take Stubbs, I'm like, oh, let's call up, we have Marshawn in his farm system. No, you don't. Marshawn is out of options. You have to cut him if you do not have him on this opening day roster. So that is where I'm at with that. Marshawn could even be a trade option down the line if you're looking at it that way. If you keep him around in this roster, they're not going to carry 3 catchers. I'm taking Marshawn over Stubbs opening day due to the fact of no options. You can't cut him, and he's just the better catcher.
Yeah. I think it's a fair assessment to make. And I think people often misconstrue that the backup catcher role doesn't really mean anything. But I mean, there were times last year where Garrett Stubbs came up in like pretty important situations and it was an automatic guy. I mean, I hate to say this because I really do like Stubbs. I think he brings a lot to the organization, but you have to prioritize offensive production when you're a position player. And if you can't bring that, like I said before, you can't bring anything else. I mean, again, I hate to say this, but he looked like watching him hit kind of brought me back to the days prior to the universal designated hitter. Like I felt like I was watching a pitcher get up there. No, I hate to say it because I really like Stubbs, and I'm not even making a joke. Like I do say a lot of ridiculous things in these podcasts. This one isn't completely ridiculous. Like he would get up there and he struck out. I don't have this, but I would bet it's about 50% of the time was his strikeout rate or somewhere around there. And when he wasn't striking out, he did not hit the ball hard at all. It was a chopper, a rollover. He didn't elevate anything beyond the infield. I mean, it like he didn't even have competitive at bats. He was overpowered by anything that was more than 95 miles per hour, and any breaking ball that was below his knees, he couldn't touch. So, and he couldn't, more importantly, he couldn't let it go. He went fishing for all of them. But I just when you watch him compared to the other players in the team, there is unfortunately a huge difference between how like their approach to the plate. And I don't think that's serviceable anymore. I mean, he did hit 207 last year, which is a lot higher than I thought it was.
Yeah,
And I'm not kidding.
his Stubbs' strikeout percentage last year was 26.7%.
There
Chase
is no
Chase
way.
rate was 32.8.
I wonder, are you on StatCast right now, Savant?
I am on Savant.
Can you see what his, I don't know how well you know this app. Can you see what his barrel, the number of barrels he had last year was?
The sweet spot percentage. Is that what
No,
I'm looking at?
it'll tell you the
Oh, barrel.
legitimate number of
His
barrels.
barrel was 0.
So he didn't barrel up a baseball the entire season.
0.0 barrel percentage.
But he had none. Okay, like that's really bad. I don't know how else to say this. Like, you've got the numbers. I mean, and we've all seen him. Like, do you agree? Like his at bats, like they're not competitive.
Stubbs is a great human being for
Yeah,
multiple reasons. I know people that have met him and in like on vacation and they just hang out. But he's not a major league hitter. He's a
no.
serviceable defensive catcher. His framing is much better than JT's, but he's a terrible hitter. When you're not hitting, it kind of washes out the catching aspect because you know,
You hit, you
so.
don't sit.
All right, so
Yeah.
we're both going with Marshawn,
In fact, he
basically.
didn't even have any barrels last year. He hasn't had a barrel since 2022.
Oh boy. All right. Anyway, let's stop this bashing.
Yeah, I know.
Let's stop
I said I
bashing
feel
Stubby.
awful. I love Stubbs. I really do. I hope he
Thoughts on
goes somewhere else and
Rojas?
rakes.
Thoughts on Rojas on this roster? Has been
Rojas
injured
was
all.
the
He's been
Rojas was
injured
the
all
only
spring.
place.
Rojas has been injured all spring. Hasn't played center field. His OPS this spring is 893. Would you like him to be in the minors, get some more reps? Because he's not going to be the everyday center fielder in the major leagues. That's Brandon Marsh. I don't know what the platoon situation is kind of iffy right now. So what do you want to see? Because they bring in Max Kepler to have an everyday center fielder in Brandon Marsh. And sometimes you could see a little bit of platoon action with Johan Rojas. They're also training Mundo Sosa to be a center fielder. So, there's a lot of things going on against Rojas's case. What do you think?
This is the only spot on your roster where I do have to disagree with you. And I'm not exactly sure he would plug in there. I don't, like you said, Weston Wilson's a big question mark right now. Um, but Rojas, he's only 24 years old. He needs at least one. And like he hasn't actually gotten a chance to play AAA baseball, which AAA baseball, I think we've probably talked about this. It might have gotten brought up a while ago when you or both of us had Alex Carr on the podcast. But double A and lower is so much different from AAA. But for a guy like Rojas, he needs to face AAA pitching because like the players overall are not as good as what you'll face in Double A. But the difference is that the players who you're facing in AAA might not have as much raw talent, but they're going to be more refined than the players in AA. Because a lot of what you see in AAA is older MLB players, utility guys who bounce back and forth between AAA and the major leagues. Guys like Cody Clemens, or I guess it would make more sense to make a pitcher comparison. I mean, we've seen guys. I can remember a big one from a few years ago was Austin Davis. He would bounce back and forth between the major leagues and Lehigh Valley before they implemented the rule where you couldn't go more than 5 times. He'd be like 8, 9 times a season. There was a time when they were guys like Hector Neris going back and forth a lot. We saw Jose Alvarado get sent down there for a short stint of time. So like those rosters, I mean, if you look at the Iron Pigs roster, you don't have the Phillies prospects are on the Iron Pigs roster. It's all of their like utility players, their depth is on that roster. The guys you would turn to when worst comes to worst and you need someone to fill a role. I remember for a while we had Trevor Plouffe on that roster. So those are the types of players that Rojas needs to face. Guys who might not be as good of pitchers in the major leagues, but they used to be major league pitchers. And those are the guys who approach pitching and face hitters with with a major league mentality. And that's what Rojas doesn't have right now. He can hit good double A pitching that will eventually turn into good major league pitching because Rojas is smart enough to figure out how they're going to pitch him. But he doesn't think like a major leaguer yet, and he needs to have that experience in AAA facing guys with the major league experience. They could be the worst major league player ever, but he's going to get more out of that than he does out of the major leagues or who he previously got out of Double A. So I really want to see him get. I mean, he didn't even get 2 weeks down there when he was optioned this season. I
Yeah,
want
because
to
they
see him
sent
get
him
it.
down. They sent him down there, and there was an injury, so he had to come right back up.
I
So
don't actually think it was a week now that I think about it. in hindsight. I
I
don't think
think
he got
I
more than
think
a
he
week.
lasted at least 5 days. Like I
Yeah,
think maybe
but he didn't. I mean, he didn't get
at
more than a
most it was a
handful.
week. But definitely, I don't think he got in 2 weeks. At
No,
most, it was a week.
he absolutely did not get it in 2 weeks, and I think it was less than a week. Um, but oh, here, no, I have it right here. Transaction history. Oh, it's not right here. I lied.
June
But
17th, he was sent down. June 28th, he was brought right back up. So that's like 12 days or 11
yeah,
days.
that's insane. Um, I'd like to see him
So
get at least 2 months
just
down
under
there.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I'd like to see him get 2, 3 months down there to really get his bearings and you know understand. Even if he's not producing the numbers that we saw at Double A, just understanding the a major league approach to hitting and then being able to get something out of it. Because at the end of the day, sure, facing really, really good pitching will help you understand how it's coming at you. But it's hard to get something out of it when you're not, or like want to get something out of it when you're not getting the results that you want. Which, as much as we like to admit that that's not a factor, it is a factor for any human being. So I have to put Rojas in AAA to start the season. Um, who are we going to put there?
Yeah, that was my follow-up question. I do
I
have one. I like you look at it, there is no depth in outfield right now. I'm looking at Cal Stevenson is probably the guy. He hit 147 this spring and 34 at bats and 533 OPS. Like that's your next best guy at this point. And that's not
right.
good. There's no depth in his outfield. Another thing with Rojas, I do think they're gonna have him up just because of the lack of depth. Another thing,
Yeah.
if you do send him down, he needs to work on bunting. Bunting is
Yeah.
my
Oh,
biggest thing
please.
with Rojas. He has the speed and the ability to bunt. He just when he
It's
does it,
so
it's not a good one, and he very rarely does it. So that's my biggest thing with Johan is getting that bunt down and perfecting that because that can be a really valuable tool. Because the Phillies don't have much small ball implemented right now, and if they can get a small ball guy like Rojas to come through in big situations, lay a bunt down, maybe get to first base, he's got speed. That is huge. But it's just like since 2023, we've been wanting him to bunt. I remember you and I, we were always on the bunting chain with Rojas back in 23 when he first started up with the Phillies, and we saw that speed and that ability. Just hasn't done it and hasn't progressed at all with it. So that's my biggest thing. If you're going to send him down there, you have to work on getting perfect.
absolutely.
But
And
I
like
just
maybe
don't think they'll
I'm
have him down there because there's nobody to bring up.
yeah, I mean, this is coming from the high school baseball player who knows absolutely nothing about playing Major League Baseball. But like I've bunted off of 85-mile-per-hour pitching before. And it would be really ignorant of me to say, oh, I'm sure 95 miles per hour isn't that much different, but it's like an objectively easy skill. If you can hit a ball out of the park, if you can hit the ball 110 miles per hour on a line, you can stick your bat in the strike zone and make contact 9 times out of 10. And like he is so fast that he could beat it out every single time. So like in my eyes, every time he records a ridiculous out, and he was like there were points last year where he was reaching Garrett Stubbs' level of looking like a pitcher hitting. Every time he records one of those outs, it's a wasted at bat, a wasted opportunity to get a base hit. And sure, eventually teams are going to pick up on it, but until they do, like you have to capitalize on his speed. You're not doing that. Like my biggest issue I have whenever I talk Phillies with someone, you're like, "Oh, you need Rojas on the team because of his speed." Speed is so useless when you don't even run the bases because you strike out every time. Like what? Like the where is he gonna do? What? Run back to the dugout? Like that doesn't get time. You can't score runs that way.
Or we
Like
can use
go
him in
do
our
that.
in the very limited time. There's a pinch runner, which happens maybe
Never.
once a month. Like very rarely you see a pinch
Yeah,
runner.
extra innings
Yeah.
is pretty much it. I mean, and there were times last year where they did pinch run him in extra innings, and then oh no, we have to play more than one extra inning. He comes to the plate and just destroys the entire inning. As much as I hate, I'm just really bashing on all of the bad hitters today. But unfortunately, it's the reality of the situation. Um, he wasn't good in the playoffs. He wasn't good in the regular season, and frankly, he didn't get much better. So, and again, like I really like Rojas, kind of like how I really like Stubbs. And Rojas, like I said before, is 24 years old and needs that time in the minors to really understand major league pitching and see some results for himself.
I've said it before with Rojas, like he's so young. They're letting him rot in the major leagues. This has happened to players before. You let him sit on the bench, and you let him not get better. You let him rot, and it ruins a career. It ruins a player. Ruins a person. So I love how I'm all for having him start in AAA, but right now on this roster, I have him starting on this opening day roster because
Yeah.
there's just nobody else. And
And
same
that's the
thing with
thing,
Colin
Ben,
Walker.
is
There's
like
nobody.
you can't even blame the Phillies for this. Like as much as you want to say the front office has done a terrible job with his development, yeah, but they have, but there's nothing they can do about that. Like unless you're gonna go out and drop another $2, $3 million on a serviceable utility player, they have to use the guy they have and hope that they can somehow compensate for the lack of playing time, you know, in practices and workouts, which is never possible. There's no pitching machine or coach that can simulate playing a game. You can't even simulate that with an inner squad. So
Rojas is supposed to get some outfield time in game this coming up. But another thing with Rojas is like game reps are bigger than are so important in baseball, and he's not going to get a lot of that in the majors. We'll get a lot of that in AAA. Those game reps, and so we'll see. I would expect Rojas to spend some time in the minors in 2025. I don't think it's going to be in April. It could be in May. We'll see. Let's see. Maybe Cal Stevenson will have a crazy month, and Edmundo Sosa learns the outfield, and let's see what happens.
I truly believe that if you gave Rojas 2 months in the minors, he could come back up, hit 280, and hit 20 doubles.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Philadelphia Phillies have hired Colin Daly on their development team as the lead. What's the position on the lead developer? Lead
Lead
development.
lead Debbie Downer.
Lead player development in the
Lead
outfield
pessimist.
department, specifically struggling speedy center fielders.
It's a very, very good position. It comes highly recommended from Johan Rojas.
Final bench
I'm sure we'd
spot.
get along great.
Final bench spot. Kind of spoke about it a little bit. Feels like it's gonna be Cody.
Yeah. And he deserves it too. He's been good.
Another guy you can trust to come off the bench. Cody Clutch Cody, whatever. What do we call him? The mini Rocket Junior, the missile. He's got a lot of different names, but
He does.
I do. What's Cody Clemens hitting this spring? I said it earlier. 910 OPS for Cody Clemens.
Wow.
910 OPS in 41 at bats. So Cody Clemens better be on this opening day roster. I'm a big Cody Clemens fan. He can play everywhere. He can do a little bit of everything. He's a great hitter as well.
He can run a bit.
He can run. Zach Wheeler, opening day starter. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, not much to talk about there. He's been good. Well, he had one slip up this spring, but elsewise he's been the Zach Wheeler. Christopher Sanchez. Can we talk about that very briefly? I
Yeah,
mean,
let's
again, I've been a big Sanchez guy over the past few years. Um,
Christopher Sanchez. I'm pulling up his line. I just pressed on the wrong player. Give me a moment. Bear with me. Christopher Sanchez has been impressive, and I'm willing. I'm ready to put my money down for him to be Cy Young. He has had 5 starts, 16.2 innings, 19 strikeouts, good for a 1.62 ERA and a .84 WHIP. He's throwing like upper 90s. What
yeah,
is this?
so that's what I want to talk about. It's insane, like the velocity development that he's made over and not just this spring, over the last 3 springs. Because he started out, he was a 90, 91, occasionally hit 92. Last year, we saw him dabbling in the mid 90s, but there were still a lot of starts where he was 93 to 95. And then all of a sudden, this spring, he's coming out 96, 97. He even touched 98 on multiple occasions in a few of his starts. And I don't think people realize the difference that makes, especially at a starting pitcher. I mean, we've seen what adding pitches can do to certain pitchers. Um, when you can add a high velocity fastball to your mix, That is one of, if not the most lethal weapons you can have in your arsenal as a pitcher. I mean, the difference, and people don't realize this, the difference between a 92 mile per hour fastball and a 98 mile per hour fastball is like night and day when you are at the plate, especially when you're trying to hit it for power, which is what you're seeing most guys do nowadays. And like just having that as something you can utilize, it's not even the speed, it's like being able to place that when it really becomes the like I said, the placement of it up in the zone is because when you can put a fastball 98 miles per hour, you know, heck high, that is so much different than a 92 mile per hour fastball because that contrast of it being at your knees compared to up here adds 10 to 20 miles per hour of just visual perceptiveness. And it is just such a ridiculous thing to be able to do when you have, like Sanchez does, the really good curveball, the really good changeup, the really good sweeper, sinker. I mean, his sinker is gross. And now that he has that upper fast, that high velocity fastball that he can use to pinpoint in the low and away corner and then come up and in. I mean, no one's gonna touch that. That's like this is like Zach. Like think about all of the outs that Zach Wheeler gets with his fastball. And he, during the regular season, is 95, 96. It's the playoffs when Wheeler like ramps it up to 98, 99. Now, if you have Sanchez coming in 97, 98, he's going to become your best pitcher on this team in a few months if he continues to utilize the fastball the way he's been doing it this spring. And this is to me a little bit expected because we saw him. He went through a lifting program in the offseason. He posted videos on his social media of him going through a bunch of weight training. So I can't say I'm surprised. With pitchers, this kind of stuff pays off, and I think a little bit of work that he put in is going to show a lot of results.
The development we saw from Sanchi was kind of tremendous last year. The jump that he took, and
Absolutely.
he's taking another one. And another guy I've been impressed with this spring. And then we have to wrap it up. But Jose Alvarado is back in the hundreds. I don't think he threw one
Yeah.
pitch over 100 in 2024.
It
Seven
was flat.
innings,
Everything was flat.
16 strikeouts, no runs, .71 WHIP in this
And it's
spring training.
rising.
Yeah,
It has like the typical Alvarado run to it. Everything. And I'll tell you, it wasn't even the fastball, it was the cutter. The cutter was so flat last year. He relies on that change of plane so much to get swings and misses. And when Alvarado's not getting swings and misses with a fastball that high velocity that you can anticipate as a hitter, it gets whacked and it gets whacked hard. But with that change of plane, it just completely throws hitters off balance. They don't know what's coming. To that, Alvarado was batting practice last year, and I'm not saying that like in a facetious way. It was just the way that he wasn't able to get movement on the cutter. It made all of his pitches look the same if you're the hitter. So 95% of his pitches were the same thing when he was really only intending to throw about 50% of his pitches being the fastball, 50% the cutter. It was more like 95% the fastball, and 5% of the time he would throw an actual cutter with the right movement on it. So I don't know if it was a mechanical thing, and you just needed more confidence in throwing it, which is like a legit thing with pitchers you'll see. At least I've seen it a lot is where pitchers they start. I mean, that really is a mechanical thing too, because they're subconsciously manipulating their mechanics to try to improve, but they're too focused on being perfect and less focused on letting their mechanics do the job. Um, so I think that's going to be huge for Alvarado if he can be consistent with that.
Yeah, we didn't see great stuff from Alvarado last year. He's gonna
No,
take a step this year in this bullpen, and he's impressed so far in spring. Nickname for Alvarado on MLB.com, El Pocho.
I thought it
El
was
Pocho.
Alvy. No,
No, El Pocho. El
El
Pocho.
Poach
I
like
put it into Google Translate.
Pocho.
It just says the Pocho. Pocho. I then looked up what that
What the
meant.
heck's a
Pocho is
Pocho?
a pejorative slang term in Mexican Spanish that refers to Americans of Mexican descent. Per
So he's calling himself like a reverse slur. Good to know.
reverse.
That's wonderful.
That's what Google is saying. I did not make that up. I don't want to get in
I
trouble.
trust you.
It's on
I know.
MLB.com, so
I'm sure
can't
it's
be
fine.
Can't get in that much
None of these
trouble.
other guys have fun nicknames, though. Weston
What's cool?
Wilson has no nickname. Let's try Bohm. He must have a nickname. He's pretty popular. No, he doesn't have a nickname.
They got Bryce down as Harp.
That's boring.
This might be what they
Why is
use.
Connor Brogdon still on this What the? Oh, it's 2024.
Yeah.
Let's
Why?
try Kyle
They
Schwarber. He
might.
must
They
have a
might just
nickname.
have what they wore. Remember the Players Weekend thing they used to
Schwarbs.
do?
I loved that. I actually bought some of the jerseys of the.
That's probably what these are.
Yeah, I think it is. T2.
Like
Yeah, that
Trey
was. I can
Turner, they
remember
got.
Trey Turner being T2.
Yeah, they got T2.
I wonder if Sir Anthony is Sir Anthony because I know that was his.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's what this is.
JT's is real. So.
Yep. I loved that. I don't know why they got rid of it. Like I
uh,
thought the jerseys were good. Well, I'm sorry. The first year when they did it, remember the second year they did Players Weekend? It was like a black jersey and a white jersey for
Yeah,
National League and American
that was
League.
year
That was
3 because the
awful.
first year they did it was when Reese Hoskins was going bananas, and then they did it
Yes.
again, and the Phillies were at Williamsport against New York, and then they did it. We were in Miami, I remember, because that was a terrible series, and they wore the black and the white. That was kind of
No, when the Phillies played there, that was after they'd gotten rid of the
well.
jerseys.
They played there twice.
Oh yeah, the
For the team.
Nationals in the second time. That's right. I
The
remember
pencil
now.
bat.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was the
yeah,
main story. They lost that game. I think they lost both
yeah.
games.
The Hoskins year was good because he was the big fella, and then oh gosh, Tommy Hunter. Remember him? The big
Bigger
righty,
fella.
bigger fella. Yeah. Um. Oh
But
man.
that was the second. I don't think Reese got a nickname that first year. I think it was too late the first time. Second time, it was definitely big fella.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Um.
No, last year they
But
brought it back, and they just put like these
last year they
patches
what?
on the hat. Like it wasn't. They didn't really do anything for it.
No. But the first 2 years when they gave them like actual uniforms, they were good uniforms. The Phillies. I don't know if you remember, they had like it was
Yeah.
cream and then like a baby blue pea. Um.
The one they had the bell was cool.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. You know who I got? I'll see if you know who this is. I don't know why I decided to pick this person for my jersey that I got that year. It was Aaron.
Aaron Altair.
Aaron Altair. I will say my favorite pastime has to be naming the Tommy Hunter thing made me think of it, naming random Phillies relievers from the past like decade.
Adam
I
Morgan.
can just go Yaxel Rios. I already brought up Austin Davis.
Yeah, that was a random one. Tyler
Edebray
Goodell.
Ramos. He was a left fielder, but yeah.
Yeah, left. He threw that ball to Cameron Ruff. That was a dime.
Yeah.
Against the Reds to get that. All right. We got to wrap this up.
We could be here all day with this.
Yeah, we could do this. We could do this for a while. Maybe we'll have a whole episode of naming 2010 Phillies. I saw this thing,
like,
John Boy Media baseball account on YouTube. They just started doing a thing. They're rolling a wheel, and they have to name a random team's lineup from the 2010s, and it is very enjoyable.
That should be a Pepper episode. We go back and forth.
We can do that. We'll do that. We'll do that sometime. All right. Anyway, SeatGeek sponsoring the show. Got my Phillies home opener tickets this week. Can't wait. And you can get yours on SeatGeek. Link is in the description of the pod. Use code Philly Sports Report. Take $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Philly Sports Report. All one word. What are we doing with that S, Colin?
Hold it. Throw it away. Way up into the nosebleeds. Never just be seen again.
Use code Philly Sports Report. $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring the Bell Ringers episode. We will see you guys soon before opening day. We are 8 days away. Colin can't wait.
I am excited, and you are too, and that is why you should purchase your tickets using SeatGeek.
And quick shout out to Colin, who is battling through illness today to do this podcast.
Yes. I've been doing it since Friday. It's muy bien.
All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next week.
Go Phils.
This has been the Bell Ringers podcast on Philly Sports Reports, brought to you by SeatGeek. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Philly Sports Reports wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Follow the podcast on X and PSR on all social media. Also, consider leaving a review. Catch Colin and Benjamin's writing on PhillySportsReports.com, along with following both on X. Thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring the show.